First story. Dead Watch Barracks. I never believed the stories they told us in basic training. Ghost stories were just distractions, ways to pass time when the days blurred together and the nights dragged on too long. But what happened at Fort Elkwood? That changed everything. It was the middle of November, cold enough to bite through 3 layers of uniform. I had just been reassigned to a decommissioned base deep in the forests of Montana. Fort Elkwood, a name that didn't show up on most maps anymore. The kind of place where secrets went to die. They told us it was a security rotation. They told us we'd only be there a few weeks. They didn't tell us about the barracks. Dead Watch Barracks was what the old files called it. Concrete bones crumbling under rusted rebar. The roof sagged like it was exhaling its last breath, and inside, it stank of mold, rust, and something else. Something sweet and rotting. There were 4 of us. Me, Corporal Jake Marston, Private Chris Owens, and Specialist Lila Sanders. Our orders were to inventory leftover supplies and secure any old armaments. First night was uneventful. Cold, quiet, and still. Second night, Marston swore he heard boots walking across the drill yard at exactly 3 a.m. But when we checked, nothing. Just the wind scraping pine needles across the pavement. By the 4th night, Owens wouldn't sleep in the barracks anymore. He kept saying he felt someone breathing behind him. I caught him crying in the latrine, whispering to someone in the mirror. When I asked who he was talking to, he just stared at me with this dead look and said, "They're still here." Sanders was the next to change. Always the toughest of us, but one morning she didn't show for inspection. I found her curled in a ball under her bunk, eyes bloodshot, nails clawed down to the quick. "There's bodies," she whispered, "under the floor." I laughed, nervously, told her she was just tired, hallucinating, but she wouldn't stop shaking. That night, I stayed awake. Around 2:40, I heard it, a slow dragging sound, like boots across gravel, then a soft, rhythmic banging on the wall behind my bed. I sat up, my breath frosted in the air. Everyone else was asleep, or pretending to be. I followed the sound into the old supply room. That's when I saw them, rows of cots. On each one, rotting, unmoving bodies in full uniform. Eyes open, staring. I ran, tripped, landed hard. When I looked up, one of them had moved, closer, mouth hanging open in a dry, frozen scream. I don't remember getting back to my bunk. I just remember waking up to screaming. Marston was gone. His bed was soaked with something thick and black. Sanders had vanished too. Only Owens and I were left. We tried to leave. Radioed for extraction. Nothing. Static. The front gate was sealed with rusted chains that hadn't been there before. We were trapped. Owens stopped speaking. Sat in the corner of the mess hall, drawing crude faces on the wall with ash and grease. Dozens of them, each one looking more lifelike than the last. One night, he carved a name into the floorboards. L.T. Harold Finch. That name stuck with me. Later, while digging through the old armory files, I found it. Lieutenant Finch, along with a dozen others, all stationed at Fort Elkwood in 1957. Disciplinary report said they all went AWOL during a training exercise. Bodies never recovered. But I knew where they were. The night before my final breakdown, I tore up the floor beneath Sanders' bunk. The boards gave way with a groan, and the stench hit me like a wave. Bones. Dozens of them. Stacked. Broken. Wrapped in scraps of uniform. Owens laughed when I showed him. Said he'd already met them. Said they'd talked to him every night. The last night, I woke up to someone singing, soft, low, like a lullaby from another world. I sat up, heart pounding. The room was full of them. The soldiers. Pale, bloodless faces, all staring at me. And in front of them, Owens, standing tall, smiling, mouth sewn shut with rusted wire. He pointed at me, and they rushed forward. I don't know how I made it out. I don't remember running. I woke up 3 miles from the base, covered in scratches and dried blood that wasn't mine. When rescue finally arrived, there was nothing left. Fort Elkwood had burned to the ground. Official story says it was a gas leak. No mention of Marston, Sanders, Owens. But sometimes, when I close my eyes, I hear that lullaby again. And I swear, I see them waiting for me in the dark. Still in uniform, still watching. Second story. Through the fog of Fort Merrick. They told me I'd get used to the quiet, that after a while the stillness of Fort Merrick would feel normal. But silence that deep has a weight to it, like it's pressing on your chest, daring you to breathe. It was my 3rd week stationed at the decommissioned outpost in northern Wyoming. My unit had been sent there for what they called sensor recalibration exercises, code for babysitting aging infrastructure no one cared about anymore. Fort Merrick hadn't seen combat since World War II. Now, it was just a skeleton in the mountains, wrapped in fog and forgotten by time. I was 23, Private First Class Joshua Green. Fresh out of Fort Benning, I still cleaned my boots twice a day and folded my shirts like the manual said. The only other soldier assigned to my section was Corporal Davis, a 30-something guy with tired eyes and a voice like gravel. He told me on day 1, "You'll hear things out here. Don't go looking." At first, I thought he meant coyotes or the wind. But on the 7th night, I heard footsteps. Not scurrying, not animals. Heavy, deliberate footsteps. Crunching gravel. Pausing. Then continuing. I was alone on watch, the external cameras flickering with static. I radioed Davis. No response. I thought maybe he'd dozed off in the barracks. I stepped outside, my breath curling in front of me like smoke. The floodlight buzzed overhead, casting hard shadows on the asphalt. Then I saw it. A silhouette, tall, broad-shouldered, wearing an old military overcoat, standing at the edge of the motor pool. Still as a gravestone. "Identify yourself," I shouted. It didn't move. I raised my rifle, safety off, heart hammering. I blinked once, and it was gone. I searched for over an hour. Nothing. No tracks, no signs of life. Davis finally responded on the radio, his voice sluggish and disoriented. Said he'd been having a heavy sleep. The next day, I found old photos in the storage office. Black and white shots of the original Fort Merrick crew from the 1940s. One man stood out. Captain Elijah Brooks. Same overcoat. Same broad shoulders. Same dead eye. I showed Davis. He went pale. "That's him," he whispered. "He's the one that walks." I laughed. Nervous, uncomfortable. Davis didn't laugh back. The following nights, it got worse. More footsteps. More silence. Sometimes a knock at the door with no one there. On the 12th night, I awoke to find boot prints, old-style military boots, around my bunk. Davis refused to talk. Just kept scribbling in a notebook, eyes bloodshot. I peeked once. He wants us to remember. He wants us to join. He wants us to finish what he started. I started seeing Brooks more clearly. Not just a shadow. His uniform was torn, bloodied, his face half burned, the other half twisted into a grin. He never spoke, just pointed. One night, he pointed at the ground. I dug there the next day, found a rusted hatch buried under gravel and moss. It wasn't on any of the maps. With Davis refusing to help, I went in alone. The hatch led to a forgotten bunker, air thick with mold, lights flickering. On the walls, names were etched, hundreds of them. Some scratched out violently, others glowing faintly under my flashlight. In the back of the bunker, I found a room sealed with a chain. It looked like it hadn't been opened in decades, but the lock was warm. I broke it. Inside, there were bone uniforms. A journal. Brooks' journal. He'd gone mad in 1947, executed his own men one by one, claiming they were traitors, claimed he was following orders from the smoke. When command finally reached Fort Merrick, they found no one alive, only Brooks, hanging from the rafters. Except, they never found his body, just his boots, and a message burned into the floor: "I will finish the mission." I ran out of there, breathless, terrified. When I got back, Davis was gone. His notebook sat on his bed. One final line added, "I followed the smoke. No one believed me when I radioed for evac. But they came, 2 days later, found me dehydrated, covered in dirt, whispering to shadows." Fort Merrick has since been closed off again. Top brass says it's due to structural instability, but I know better. Because sometimes, when I close my eyes, I still hear the footsteps, and I still see him pointing, waiting, calling, through the fog. Third story / Beneath the Mud of Carter's Hollow. My name is Marcus Dell. I served in the United States Army, 2nd Battalion, based out of a forgotten training site deep in the Ozark Mountains of Arkansas. The place was called Carter's Hollow, an old World War II site no longer listed on official maps. We trained there during the spring of 2019, right after my unit was reorganized. From the moment we arrived, something felt wrong. The camp was sunken between two hills, shrouded in constant mist, barracks with rotting walls and busted windows, a mess hall that smelled like wet copper and mold. The locals called it cursed land, but brass didn't care about ghost stories. They wanted isolation. We gave them compliance. I shared a barracks with 5 others. One of them, Private Hill, started acting strange the second night. Said he heard scratching beneath the floorboards. We laughed it off, told him it was rats or old plumbing. But he didn't sleep that night. Next morning he looked pale, eyes bloodshot, lips cracked like he hadn't drank in days. By the 5th night, he was gone. No one heard him leave. His gear was still there. We searched the area, forest, mess, latrine, even down near the old fallout shelter we were told not to go near. We found him. He'd snagged on some salt and peppers, and some fresh flowers, and some seeds he dug up in the garden. Near the front door, he searched the area. Forest, mess, latrine, even down near the old fallout shelter we were told not to go near. Nothing. Command called it desertion, closed the case in hours. But we knew Hill. He was quiet, sure, but he was solid. He wouldn't run. That night, I heard the scratching too. At first, it was faint, like a stick being dragged along the underside of the floor. Then deeper, something wet, slapping, breathing. I didn't sleep, just stared at the corner where the noise seemed loudest. The next day, Private Reyes, one of the guys from my room, told me he'd been having nightmares, that something was watching him through the slats in the floor. We pried up a board, just to prove it was all in our heads. Beneath it was dirt, just wet, black Arkansas mud. Except it was moving. I swear to God, it was shifting, like it breathed. Reyes screamed and ran out. I tried to calm him down, but he wouldn't stop shaking. That afternoon, they found him in the showers, dead. No wounds, no signs of struggle. Just wide-eyed and stiff, like he'd seen something that killed him without touching him. They evacuated half the barracks, sent us to temporary tents, said it was a mold problem. But I stayed. I needed answers. I started digging, literally. One night, I went back into the old barracks with a flashlight and a shovel, tore up the floor in Hill's corner, dug until my hands bled. And about 3 feet down, I hit something solid. It was wood, an old hatch, covered in strange carvings, symbols like spirals and jagged eyes. I opened it. Beneath was a tunnel. It smelled of rot and iron. I crawled inside. It went deeper than it should have, much deeper. Walls lined with decayed bones, helmets, old insignia from wars before my time. I found a chamber lit by something I can't explain. Phosphorescent moss, maybe, or something worse. At the center, a mound of writhing mud, and it spoke. Not in words, in pressure, in pulses inside my skull. It showed me things. Men buried alive, screaming beneath Carter's Hollow. Sacrifices. Soldiers sent here over decades, fed to the thing that sleeps beneath. I tried to run. The tunnel shifted. I got lost. Hours passed, or maybe days. I finally clawed my way out near the old latrines. When I stumbled back to camp, they said I'd been missing for 3 days. I told my story to command. They transferred me within a week, told me to keep my mouth shut. But the hollow isn't closed. I've seen new units being bussed in. Young guys, unaware. I don't sleep much anymore. Sometimes, when it rains, I hear the scratching again, and I know it's still hungry. Fourth story. Where the fog never lifts. They say the fog in northern Michigan rolls in like a ghost and never leaves. I used to think that was just local superstition, but after what happened at Camp Warden, I know better. My name is Corporal Eric Dalton. I was stationed at Camp Warden in late October, part of a joint training exercise with the National Guard. It was supposed to be a week of simulated drills, cold weather survival, and night maneuvers. We were told the fog was normal, thick, wet, endless, but harmless. They lied. The first 2 days went by without incident. We settled into a rhythm, waking up in the freezing dark, trudging through mud, eating canned meals by flashlight. The fog made it hard to see more than a few feet, but we managed. Then Private Daniels disappeared. It happened on the 3rd night. He went out to relieve himself, maybe 30 yards into the woods behind the barracks. He never came back. We searched for hours. Dogs, flares, even a chopper once the weather allowed. Nothing. No prints, no gear, no body. Just that damn fog, thicker than ever. Captain Ridley called it an unfortunate accident. He probably wandered off and got turned around. We all nodded, but none of us believed it. The next night, Sergeant Monroe started talking in his sleep, muttering weird things like, "He's still out there, under the frost." When we tried to wake him, he sat up bolt straight and screamed, loud. I'll never forget the look in his eyes. By morning, Monroe was gone too. His bunk was still made, boots lined up, dog tags left behind. Panic started creeping in. Some guys refused to leave the barracks. Others kept weapons on them, even when not on patrol. I volunteered for night watch, mostly because I couldn't sleep anyway. That's when I first saw it. Around 2 in the morning, I caught movement in the trees, a shape, tall, thin, and gliding. Not walking, it just hovered. I blinked, thought it was sleep deprivation. Then it turned its head. It had no face, just smooth skin stretched over bone. But it saw me. I know it saw me. I froze. Didn't move. Didn't breathe. It slipped back into the fog. When I told Captain Ridley, he ordered me to undergo a psychological eval. He said I was cracking from stress. But the disappearances continued. Every night, one more man vanished. Always in the fog. Always without a trace. Soon, there were only 6 of us left. We barricaded ourselves in the main command post, weapons loaded, radios dead. Outside, we heard whispers, like voices from underwater. One night, it spoke. "You shouldn't have stayed," it said that, clear as day, in a voice that sounded like all of us, blended into one. Private Haskins opened the door. He said he saw his mother in the fog. We tried to stop him, but he walked right into it, smiling. He vanished in seconds. Then the lights went out. The fog poured in through the vents. It was alive. It crawled like snakes across the floor, up the walls, into our mouths. We fired blindly, screaming. I don't remember passing out, but I woke up alone. Camp Warden was empty, no signs of struggle, just empty cots and cold meals. The fog was gone. When I made it to the highway, a trucker picked me up. I told him I was from Camp Warden. He stared at me like I was insane. Son, that place burned down in 1998. Ain't been anything there since. I checked the map. There's no record of it. Not on satellite, not in the army logs. I still see the fog sometimes, in dreams, or when the weather gets cold. And sometimes I hear it whispering, "You shouldn't have stayed." Fifth story. The drums beneath Red Hollow. They told us the Red Hollow site was decommissioned for safety reasons, something about unstable ground, maybe leftover ordnance. But no one ever really explained why our unit was sent to guard it. No public interest, no civilians for miles, just thick pine woods, a crumbling barracks, and the kind of silence that presses against your eardrums like pressure before a storm. We were stationed in northern Georgia, maybe 10 miles from a town called Blair Ridge. A ghost town, practically. I'd been active for 2 years, but this deployment felt wrong from the start. My name's Corporal Ethan Miles, 29th Infantry. And what I'm about to tell you still keeps me up. Every time the wind hits the trees just right. It started the first night. I bunked with Sergeant Collins and Private Decker. Collins was a hard ass, the kind who ironed his socks. Decker, 19, scared of his own shadow. We laughed it off when he said he heard drums after lights out. "You're hearing pine cones drop," Collins said, shaking his head. "No, Sarge. It was rhythmic, like war drums. Real slow, like someone's watching us." We laughed again, but I didn't sleep. The next night, the drums came back, low and distant, like someone banging on old oil barrels miles away, muffled through dirt. Boom, boom, boom. Always 3 beats, then silence. I stared at the cracked ceiling, too afraid to move. The air in the barracks felt heavy, and the pine trees outside, perfectly still. By the third night, even Collins heard them. He didn't admit it, but I saw the way he stared into the trees during patrol, jaw clenched, rifle tight. Then, Private Walsh disappeared. She was posted near the old motor pool. Her rifle was found leaning against a tree, radio still clipped to her belt. No signs of struggle, just gone. Command sent a chopper. No one came. Our communications started to fail. Radios clicked with static. GPS wouldn't load past a spinning circle. It felt like the world was forgetting we were there. Day 5, Decker started drawing symbols. He wouldn't say where he saw them, but they looked burned into the paper, crude spirals, circles with 3 lines intersecting. Always 3. Boom, boom, boom. Collins snapped, locked him in the supply cage. That night, we heard Decker scream. The drums started again, louder now, closer. The walls of the barracks shook like a passing freight train. We rushed to the cage, empty. No broken lock, no sign of a struggle. Just his drawings scattered across the floor, and blood, a trail leading under the floorboards. The boards we thought were sealed shut. Collins and I pried them open. A tunnel. Dirt and rock, clawed out by hand. Too narrow for a man to fit, but the blood led down, and the drums, they were echoing from below. We sealed it. We tried. But on day 6, Collins walked into the woods with his eyes rolled back. No weapon, just humming something I couldn't place. A tune that matched the drums. I tried to stop him. He looked back once. "They're underneath," he whispered, "and they're waking up." I never saw him again. I radioed command. No answer. I tried to drive out. My compass spun in circles. Roads looped. Always ended back at Red Hollow. I set fire to the barracks. Thought it might burn them out. The drums kept playing. Boom, boom, boom. Day 9, I found a field of bones behind the mess hall, fresh. Uniforms half buried. Some still had tags. Names of soldiers listed as discharged or dead decades ago. One had my name. My name. I didn't sleep. I didn't eat. I sat with my back to the fire, rifle loaded. I told myself I'd make it to sunrise, but it never came. Every time I thought I saw the first light over the trees, the sky darkened again. Time was looping, or had stopped. Now, I hear them outside the door, the drums, boom, 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 and whispering. So many voices, all saying the same thing. He's still down here. You all are. If someone finds this, if you're reading my journal, do not send anyone to Red Hollow. There's no ground left to bury what sleeps below.